I'm Steve Sapato, and we're going to be working on a few things to help you be more successful, make more money, and be happier in your life. Would you like that? We are starting with one area that when we ask, almost everyone says that they do not need any help, and that's the area of confidence. Do you agree with that? Are you already confident enough? Because if all of us were more confident, we would probably be more successful. Probably. We all lack confidence in many areas of our lives. That's acceptable. But many of us say we are confident when, as you'll find out, we're not nearly as confident as we'd like to think we are. Confidence can make us better in everything that we do. Would you like to win in every opportunity that you run into? Would you like to present a winning solution so that people recognize your abilities, want to work with you, look forward to working with you? Would you like to have the confidence you need to face every situation and help bring every one of them to a satisfactory conclusion? Wow, that is what knowing how to speak, present, and communicate actually means. Would you like to be more confident, visible to others as a leader, and recognized for your ability to help in almost every situation? Think how that would change your life. Would it change your income? Would you have a much brighter future? Being confident in every situation is actually a requirement to become a billionaire. Well, I'm not saying you're going to be a billionaire. I'm saying that billionaires have those types of skills for making decisions, deals, and connecting people. That's a vital skill, and it should be important to you. Do you have those skills? If you said yes, then maybe you just need the skill to use those skills. Or would you like to have those skills? Maybe develop them, maybe bring them right up to the forefront, because that's what this webinar is all about. This webinar will share with you several ways, methods, and ideas to help you become the confident, in control person that you would love to be. I would love to be more confident in many areas. That's what we work on. One of the greatest challenges anybody faces is a lack of confidence. And that's why I decided to put on this 30-minute presentation to help some people just discover, open a window, crack open a door to their future, and see if they want to go through it. That's what's important. Are you learning? Are you growing? These ideas and assumptions might move you a little, or they might jumpstart your life with power and electricity. Ooh, I felt it already. Did you? Would you love to find out what's been holding you back? Imagine suddenly realizing one of your shortcomings, something that has held you back and kept you from all the giant opportunities in your life, including promotions, leadership opportunities, ideas that could have made you a millionaire by now, things that maybe you once thought were beyond your abilities. Have you ever thought that? But it was simply beyond your ability to see yourself as the winner that could accomplish so much more. We talk about self confidence, and yet hardly anybody teaches us how to be more self confident. I think it is vital in what we're going to be doing here that this is discovering the self, finding things within us that make us say, wow, I didn't know that. Most people hold themselves back with something out of their past. You can go to these regressive trainers, you can go to people who hypnotize you and bring that stuff out. But what it really amounts to is there are things in your past that are holding you down. Sometimes it's things in your recent past, and sometimes it's things people have said to you that you didn't dream could have an impact on your life. I remember reading somewhere when I was in my teenage years, and it said, gentlemen always walk on the outside of the street to protect the lady, which means if you're walking down the street, your wife, your girlfriend, your partner always walk to the inside of the gentleman. The gentleman walks on the outside because it's an old fashioned, old time tradition. When walking down the street and horseless carriages would splash people as they drove by, you, as the gentleman, were the first one to take that hit. That's what they said a gentleman was, and I've always done that since I read about it. You have to start learning just what affects and impacts us. What creates in us these ideas? I also learned that there was another thing that holds with me until this day again. I was young, who knows, but it said a true gentleman always excuses himself no matter whether there's anybody in the room or not when they burp or do something else. But it doesn't matter if there's anybody else around. A true gentleman always says, "Excuse me." Hey, do you do that? Is that something you're doing? Well, I know we're talking to men and women, so all of these things affect us differently. What were you taught that made a difference to you? That's what I want to know. When we're looking at what difference it made to you, you have to put out the things that you want. You got a piece of paper? Pause this right now, and I want you to write down a couple things that you remember that have really stayed with you, influenced you, created something in you that you really like, because there's also things that created in us things that we don't really like our fears, our trepidations, our lack of confidence, right? What do you see as your lack of confidence? What created it? It's fear of the telephone. Many people here love picking up the telephone to make a phone call, to make a sales call, to ask people for money, but not many of us either. I mean, some of us hate the phone. Maybe you're with a not for profit and you have to call and ask people for money. You just hate picking up the phone. What do they call that? The 800-pound gorilla or the elephant in the room, right? Whatever they call it, it's your inability to pick up the phone because you just hate it. I dealt with that for decades. I can say it comes from one thing. When I was 25 years old working with IBM, but when I really think about it, I don't think it comes from that. I think it comes from a much deeper thing inside of me. I think it comes from farther back than that. But it might not. It's things we have to start figuring out, things you get to start figuring out. Maybe it's something more recent, but you have to recognize your shortcomings and then you have to learn how to deal with those shortcomings. So no matter what happens to you, you're able to confront this head on. One of the things that stops us is our inability to be confrontational. Wait, I don't mean screaming and hollering and yelling. I don't mean being the Karens of the world today. I mean full out confrontational. I worked with a corporation for many years, and they had a bunch of managers in the room. And I said, "What's one of your greatest challenges?" And three different managers raised their hands and said, "We have a manager who is absolutely making us nuts." And in the ensuing conversation, what I found was that their manager was the same manager for all three people. Here's what's interesting: that manager wasn't in the room now because they were high enough up in the hierarchy that they didn't have to attend this training for managers. Fascinating how some people are exempt. But what happened was the first manager at level A found someone to be the squeaky wheel, always yelling, always screaming, always having a problem. And so that person was confrontational, always getting in their face. So instead of dealing with it, they promoted them because this manager had not been taught confrontational management. This manager promoted him to get rid of him. The next manager found out that the person was confrontational, didn't want to deal with him, promoted him. And the third manager didn't like dealing with that person, right? So because they were so in your face, and so they promoted him. Now that person is the boss over all three of these people and making their lives miserable. Learning how to deal with confidence, learning how to deal with confrontation with confidence. You don't have to scream and holler. You don't have to get mad. You just have to learn how to deal in confidence. Would you like to be that person? Person who can deal with confrontational people, who can solve the problems, the challenges, who can meet these squeaky wheels and problem getters and, right front up. Let's start with learning your confrontational skill level. Here's a simple question. When you go to a restaurant and somebody in your party has a bad meal, so let's say there's four of you at the table. One of you has a bad meal, and the server walks up and says, "Hey, how is everything?" And everybody says, "Fine." And you go, "Yeah, it's fine." Okay, because it's not your meal, right? But maybe that person over there says it's fine. And when the server walks away, you go, "Hey, why didn't you tell them that your food was not satisfactory?" And they say, "No, it's okay." The answer is no, it's not okay. We're paying for that meal, we're paying for that food, we're paying for the service, and we're paying for the quality, right? You should make sure that it's right. You don't have to be mad. You don't have to be angry. You don't have to throw your plate on the floor saying, "I demand." Just say, "Hey, you know what? I'm not happy. And if they can't take care of it, then you make a decision not to ever go back again to that place. But most of us, and ask yourself this, if there's something just not right, do you just go, it's okay, as opposed to confronting the server who has potential to make it right, or asking for the manager who has the great potential to make it right? Instead, you say, it doesn't matter. You see, that's not confidence in how you deal with what happens to you or the people around you. I share that I know I can get anything on the menu exactly the way I want it. And I know that demanding it a certain way will probably cost me additional money. I'm strong enough in me that I can ask again to get what I want how I want it. How about you? After all, isn't that why the restaurant is in business? To take your money, to make money. And they do that by making us happy. Those are things that when we talk about dealing in confidence, we want you to understand that there are all kinds of ways, little ways, big ways. Confidence will change your life. I bet you have powers that you've never tapped into. I bet you have confidence, but simply didn't know how to verbalize it enough for others to recognize. Being confident in every conversation will change your life. We're going to spend some time. And when you're confident, when you learn you can do this, it's like dropping a bomb into your mind and your future, because your future is what we're talking about here. What does confidence mean and how does it work? We all like to think we're confident, but when the poo hits the fan, what would you do if the boss said, the board of directors is coming tomorrow and I need you to give a presentation on? And it turns out that you have knowledge in an area, but not what you consider expertise. Would you be really confident tomorrow giving that presentation? Write it down. Write it down now. Why or why not? What if we were attending an event and the speaker who was supposed to show up canceled, and suddenly someone in the audience says, hey, you're the go to person. You can stand up and give us a presentation 20 minutes, 30 minutes long, right? We know you can because we know what you do and we know you're capable of it. Really? Would you be confident enough then to stand up and give a quick 30-minute presentation? It would help the whole organization. It would teach the whole organization. It would showcase your expertise on the topic. Now that's confidence. But maybe speaking is your area of expertise, so that wouldn't be a problem for you. Let's look at it differently then. What if you were supposed to meet someone who was going to join you in a large business event and then they didn't show up? Would you still go in? When you went in, would you actually start moving around? Some of us are introverts. Some of us would just sit in the back of the room and say, oh my gosh, I don't feel comfortable going up to people. I don't feel comfortable talking to people. I don't feel confident in letting people see me. Is that you? Another example. What if you're in a strange city and you need to go to dinner? Would you go to dinner by yourself? You see, that truly exudes confidence. I can go into any place, sit down, have dinner, and enjoy myself. Can you? But that's the advantage of having a cell phone these days, right? We can sit and enjoy ourselves and look at our own stuff. Remember, confidence doesn't mean you're comfortable in it. It means you're strong enough when you can do the things that you're uncomfortable with, right? But they don't make you feel terrible. Notice I didn't say force yourself to sit there and eat and say, I'm so uncomfortable. No, go in, be confident. You see, that's what confident means on every level. You're just not comfortable here or comfortable there. You're comfortable almost everywhere. Now, nobody's going to be comfortable everywhere, right? But you can overcome your fears. You can overcome your trepidations. It means self assurance in your ability to adapt to almost any situation. It means you need to know and understand yourself. How about walking into an event? Most people will look for people they know and try to sit with them. What does that gain? Because you already know them, and sitting with them will not grow your network or expand your knowledge by learning about them, what they do, and how they do it. Right? You should put yourself in situations where you need to expand and grow beyond what your normal abilities are. That's what networking is all about. Go sit with new people the next time you network. New people. Confidence happens in your voice, in your gestures. It shows up in how you enter a room, walk onto a stage. Confidence is in the timbre of your voice, your nervousness, your ability to think on your feet. Confidence is how you want other people to see you and interact with you. For instance, you have confident conversations. You say, well, what does that mean? What does that mean, Steve? That means, are you empowering the people you're having the conversation with, or you just talk about yourself? Confidence is learning about the other person, giving the other person the opportunity to share who they are, what they do, why and how they do it. Confidence is taking that other person's information and really growing because you understand that when you speak, you know what you know. When you listen, you know what you know, and now you know what they know. That's confidence. Most of us talk about ourselves because we're afraid of being quiet. What does that mean, Steve? If you listen to most conversations, the reason people say, or especially the young people today, they say, like, I really like to do this, like, I'm like, quit it. That's their The like is their and most of us insert because we're afraid of silence. And what is silence? It's a pause. Are you uncomfortable yet? A pause is showing that you have the strength to look at somebody, look at any situation, and pause. We do that in our normal conversation. Confidence. You know how to chat at a level where you learn, appreciate, compliment, laugh, and share with a complete stranger. A lot of people say I make them feel comfortable because I do that. I tell people when I go to a networking event, I can either ask questions or I can give opportunities. One of my pitches, yes, when I tell about myself, it's a pitch. I help people quadruple their appointments, fill their calendars, and close more business. When you are frustrated with not getting the results in your networking promised you would get, I will be able to make you an appointment every time you meet the right prospect. Now, does that sound like somebody you might want to talk to? Yeah, right. Or you could approach it from a different perspective and say, you have a full calendar? Do you already have your calendar filled up and don't need any more business? Well, if they're going to a networking event, then their calendar is not really full, probably, right? What we need to do is ask them the questions and see who responds. If you have a full calendar and can't handle any more business, raise your hand. Well, if no hands went up, then I get to say, would you like to fill your calendar with no room for any more appointments? When you work with me, I'll show you how you can fill that calendar. You see how you approach things with confidence and what a wonderful place it can be? Always being able to have conversations that serve. You get that? You see, I'm not selling my program. I'm asking to serve them by helping them grow their business. What are you doing to serve? When you're doing something like speaking and somebody says, hey, could you speak on that? I'm serving my boss being able to get up tomorrow, give a presentation that will absolutely change the company. I hope what I inject, I hope what I share will make an impact. I hope what I have to offer will make a direct impression on the bosses, the board of directors, whoever I'm speaking in front of, because I want them to know that I know my stuff. I'm confident in what I do. Every action that you take is a vote for who you want to be. Did you get that? Every action that you take is a vote for who you want to be. You can write that down. Probably take some time. I thought it was real cool because I just heard it recently myself. We all have things that we struggle with. We all have upper limit problems. What? Upper limit problems? Have you heard the story about the flea circus? I do love to tell this story at places because it really gets an attention. It was a deal where this guy had trained fleas. It was a trained flea circus, right? And so he'd go to these places and he had open jars for fleas. Now everybody knows fleas can jump like crazy. He'd open these jars, small jars, tall jars, and the fleas would all jump but stay in the jar. Some jars sit next to each other, and one of the fleas could jump all the way up to here. But in this jar, the fleas only jumped to here. He would take the top off, and the fleas didn't jump out. And he asked, you know why? Because I trained them with the lids on. So they'd jump and bonk their head, they'd jump and bonk their head, they'd jump and bonk their head because it was making them mad, probably, right? And I don't know why, but once the fleas learned that they didn't want to bonk their head anymore, they would stop jumping any higher. You know what? That's what most of us have been taught. You've been taught, you've been educated to think that this is your upper limit when there is no upper limit. Some of the people who become multimillionaires, you know who they are. You probably got friends who are that, right? And they're uh, millionaires, and then suddenly they're multimillionaires. And I said suddenly, but it might take 10 or 20 years. Well, how did they do that? They didn't know that they had an upper limit. They went out and just kept learning more. They grew more. They hung around with people who helped them to grow. They spent time attending things that helped them to grow, become, and learn to be more than they were. And some of us say, well, I've done the same things, right? Well, the difference is sometimes they act and a lot of us don't. Isn't that the truth? So when you talk about how we limit things, we limit ourselves. And that's almost always true of everything we do. I got a whole workshop on balcony people and basement people. And the balcony people are represented by a story. You ready for my story? If you go crabbing in the East Coast, they usually give 5, 6 people, and they all give them a bucket, this tall. And if you go out crabbing, they give the first crab to one person who's probably the most skittish. Could be a woman, could be a teenager, could be a guy, right? But if you pick up that crab and you put it in a bucket, first chance it gets, that crab grabs a hold and flips itself out. And they're always like, "What are you doing? What are you letting that crab out for?" And of course, the person's like, "Hey, I don't want to touch it. Ooh, scary." But they find the second crab, and instead of giving it to somebody else, they give it to the same person who had the first crab. And the person's like, "No, no, 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 I don't want any more crabs," because they're afraid the crabs are now both going to jump out. But here's what they don't know: crabs are like fleas, crabs are like balcony people, and the basement people that we run into in our lives. The crabs, when one starts to get out, the other crab says, "Hey, wait a minute, don't go without me." As one starts to flip itself out, the other crab grabs onto him. And instead of pulling them both out, it actually pulls them both back in. Every time one goes to crawl out, the other one grabs onto him and pulls them back in. When you've got one crab, it can flip itself out, but when you got two crabs, they almost never get out of the bucket. That's balcony people and basement people. Actually, it's the basement people, but my talk is balcony and basement. People who've planted the seeds and how high you can jump. Why do you want to do that? What makes you think you can do that? No one's ever succeeded with their family doing that. All those wonderful things that they think they're doing to protect you, think they're helping you, protecting you from failure, when what they're really doing is pulling you back down. You see, the same isn't the same. It isn't the same challenge that you face in everyday life, is it? You know what your own limitations are. You've looked into that. Have you started to delve into that? One of the stories I tell, see if you can relate to this. I told people for decades that I'm not good with my hands. How about you? Do you have a limitation that you always tell people? Well, one day I owned a nightclub and a banquet hall, and my manager looked at me and said, "Why do you tell people that?" I said, "Well, I'm just not good with my hands. I don't know what's the problem." And they said, "Well, didn't you own a sporting goods store?" I said, "Well, yeah." They said, "What did you do there in the sporting goods store?" I said, "I mounted skis, I cambered skis, I did ski boots, I made custom ski boots, I strung racquetball rackets, I made golf clubs, I strung tennis rackets." And she went, "So you were good there?" I went, "Well, I like to think I was pretty good. People appreciated what I did." Then she said, "What else have you done?" And I said, "Well, I had an ice cream store where we made our own ice cream." She said, "Did you learn to make ice cream? Did you ever have any problems in an ice cream store?" So I told her a couple stories. One was I was fixing a hot fudge machine, and when I reached under the counter, I touched the electric wires and I bounced myself off the back counter. So anyway, I learned not to do electrical work again. And she said, "How about having this nightclub? Who just did the floor out there?" And I said, "Well, I worked with Omar and we fixed the dance floor, put on a whole new dance floor. And when the toilets are broken after these wonderful guys on the floor get drunk, after they do what they do, drunk people, who fixes the plumbing?" I said, "Well, I have to because we can't afford to hire a plumber all the time." She said, "So you do all of these things and yet you tell people that you're not good with your hands." I thought about that and I went, "Yeah, that's right. How can that be?" And the more I thought about it, it went back to a childhood thing where my dad was very good with his hands and he did all kinds of work. And he looked at me one day and he said, "You know what? You're not really good with your hands. Why don't you just go away and I'll finish this up?" Now, maybe he didn't really say it that way, but that's what I heard. Isn't that how that goes a lot of times? He might have just said, "Hey, why don't you go play? Go play, have a great time." And I'm like, "Oh, dad doesn't like me helping him. Well, I must not be very good." Well, that really stuck with me. Steve is not good with his hands. What are you stuck with? What are you working on? Right? And those are the things that we have to see. You see, some of the things that we want you to know in becoming really confident is that when you work with the right people, confidence happens. When I teach people how to be great presenters, one of the things I have to teach them is to have the confidence to stand in front of other people and give their expertise. People say, I don't have any expertise. Here's what I'll tell you. There are people out there making a living just teaching people how to be better restaurant servers. There are people out there teaching people how to be better bartenders. There's people out there teaching people how to be better ball players, right? How to be better janitors, how to be better. And they make a living online and in person teaching things that other people might have thought about teaching at some point in their lives, but said, but that doesn't make me an expert. Well, that's not a great area of expertise, and yet it is. Just like being able to help you and teach you how to be a lot more confident in front of everybody. And you do that with a public speaking course. You can take a public speaking course from me and you can get it done for as little as $2,500, or take a course to be an expert in conversation. Or how would you like to take a course in confidence? You see, it's all wrapped up in kind of like the same one. And when you're done, it changes your entire life. One of the things I ask people all the time is, when you enter a room, how do you enter a room? You kind of walk in and make your way through things through the crowd, or do you walk in with your head held high and just walk through people like, and they should be looking at you? Well, that scares the holy bejesus out of some of you, doesn't it? Just thinking about it. I hear you screaming at me, I wouldn't want that, Steve. But you would, because that makes you someone special, important, an expert, confident in what you're doing. What's the difference between a Queen of England walking into the room or you walking into the room? Well, first of all, she's known as the Queen of England. What are you known for? But you might be known for, hey, isn't that the author of that book? Hey, you know what? That's the person who we just saw speaking. That's the person who owns that company. When it's time, when you have all of these things in front of you, you make yourself visible. You become confident. And when all those things speak confidence and you walk into all those things, then you will know that you have excelled in the area of confidence. Don't let somebody else decide what you will be. Don't let somebody else tell you what you will be. The whole thing about this is you have to determine your confidence. Can you do that? And how do you do that? What are you strong in knowing? What do you excel at? What will make you the person that other people want to get to know? You walk in with a three-piece suit, nice tie, and everybody goes, that's impressive. Because especially today, hardly anybody walks in wearing a three-piece suit, do they? I don't see it very often. Not in most areas. Do you walk in with a sailor hat on? I know somebody who wears weird suits and sport coats. He's an attorney, but he also does public speaking. And he wants to stand out from the rest of the attorneys. So he had suits made with dollar bills, not real dollar bills, dollar bill material. He'd walk in with a suit that was all green with dollar bills. Or he'd walk in with a suit that had polka dots all over it because he wanted to stand out. I got another friend that when you look through a crowd, you know that when you see him, he's got this funky little hat on. And every time you look across the room, you can say, there he is, because he became known for that hat. That's his confidence symbol. And that's exceptional when you walk into a room and can be recognized for something that you are, something you're doing, something you've become. I want you to start to understand that the reason you came to this today was simply to find out how to be more confident. And I'm going to ask you to do something for me. Would you? Write to me at steve@stevesapato.com. Write to me and share with me one or two things that you think have been holding you back. Things that you went, oh, I know what could have been holding me back now. Share with me the story. Write to me. Send them to me. Let's find out how you can overcome those. And if you say, Steve, I overcame these, I'm pretty confident, and I overcame these, then tell me those stories. I think that what you're going to find is that things you want are now within your reach. It's based upon the confidence you need to get over that hump. You know that hump I'm talking about? I hope you're having a blessed day. I'm Steve Sapato. God bless.